The anime starts with a guy named Uera, who works at a travel agency. He's an introvert living alone with his cat. While his life isn't particularly exciting, he feels genuinely happy whenever he spends time with his cat. At work, Uera notices his colleague, Hontou, frequently staring at him, which leaves him confused. Since she has been there a year longer than him, he wonders if she might be upset with him for some reason. However, Uera had no idea that Hontou just wanted to talk to him. Like him, she's also an introvert and is often misunderstood by others, who assume she's angry because she tends to stare at people without realizing it. Hontou feels it's not worth the effort to explain herself. Even though her life is like this, Hontou doesn't mind it much at all. By the time she gets home, her stress disappears as she finds joy and relaxation in studying various maps. Uera and Hontou are both content with their lives. However, one day, Kurikawa, the branch manager, calls a meeting to announce that the company plans to open a branch in Alaska next year. They need to send someone from their office to manage it. Since Alaska is so far away and would mean being separated from family, the company will select someone who is unmarried. Kurikawa then asks if anyone would volunteer, but naturally, no one is eager to go, given how distant it is. Uera raised his hand and told Kurikawa that he couldn't go, no matter what, because he has a cat to take care of. However, Kurikawa responded that this wasn't a valid reason. Later, his co-workers shared their thoughts on the situation, explaining that while traveling to Alaska might be exciting, living there was a different story. Based on what they knew, it would likely take at least 3 or 4 years of working there before returning. One of the co-workers jokingly suggested to another that they should just get married, since the company prefers someone who is single. Uera overheard this and thought that even if he wanted to, he couldn't, since he didn't have any female friends. As he was thinking, Hontou kept staring at him without saying a word. Hontou also didn't want to go to Alaska. Not only was it far away, but she had also heard that the mosquitoes there were like monsters. To her, it was a matter of life and death. The next day, after taking his cat to the vet, Uera and Hontou unexpectedly meet, despite never having spoken before. Uera suddenly gathers up his courage, thanks Hontou for all her help, and informs her that he plans to quit his job the next day. For him, his cat means everything, and he simply cannot abandon it. Hontou asks Uera if there's anyone who could look after his cat, like a girlfriend or a family member, but he quickly denies it. As he's about to leave, Hontou stops him and suggests they get married since she doesn't want to go to Alaska either. Uera thinks it's a wild idea, but after considering it for a moment, he agrees. Hontou is confident her plan will work. Since neither of them stands out much at work, she doubts anyone will pay too much attention if they announce they're getting married. Her plan is to act as if they're married for a few months, let the situation settle down, and then quietly let things fade, pretending it never happened. Hontou assures Uera that since it was her idea, he can leave everything to her, and he doesn't need to do a thing. The next day, Hontou informs Kurikawa about their married. Instead of being suspicious, Kurikawa is overjoyed to hear the news. Afterward, Hontou and Uera continue working as usual, but when their eyes meet, they can't help but blushing. Later that day, Kurikawa calls Uera, asking him to bring a document to their usual meeting place and to bring Hontou along. Little did they know, when they arrive, they are surprised to find it's actually a celebration, a surprise party congratulating them on their engagement. Uera starts to worry, fearing they might get exposed if people start asking too many questions. Hontou then comes up with an idea. She grabs 2 bottles of wine and heads to a room alone, only to return later, visibly drunk. Meanwhile, Uera finds himself surrounded by co-workers bombarding him with questions. Wanting to help him, Hontou grabs a microphone and starts singing. However, her singing isn't great, and the atmosphere becomes awkward. Despite feeling embarrassed, she continues singing, determined to distract everyone. As he watches her, Uera feels a deep sense of admiration, thinking her actions are truly heroic. On the way home, Hontou swears she'll never sing again. Suddenly, she trips and falls into Uera's arms. Embarrassed, she quickly apologizes and rushes off. As he watches her leave, Uera starts to regret and wonders why he didn't get up and join her to sing a duet back then. He thinks he's pathetic for letting her do it all alone. Over the weekend, Uera and Hontou go on a date to come up with a convincing story about how they met. and decided to get married. During the date, Honjuji feels that Uera isn't enjoying himself and feels sorry for being such a boring companion. However, as the date is about to end, Uera suddenly speaks up and offers to help her create their love story together. While riding the Ferris wheel, he asks if she likes Ferris wheels. Honjuji replies that she doesn't particularly like them but has something she wants to do. As Uera looks at her closely, he notices that she has a pleasant scent. Honjuji then takes out a pair of wedding rings and hands one to Uera. Although the rings aren't expensive, she believes they're necessary to make their wedding story more convincing. Uera begins to feel nervous, hesitating to put it on. He thinks that wearing the ring now would make it feel as though they're really getting married. While he's lost in thought, Honjuji calmly slips the ring onto her own finger without hesitation. She then asks Uera to come up with a proposal line for her to write down. Her idea for the story is that they were riding a Ferris wheel, and when it reached the top, Uera proposed to her. Uera thinks it's a romantic idea but struggles to come up with something to say. Honjuji reassures him that she can think of something herself if he can't, but Uera insists on doing it. As he prepares to say, "Will you marry me?" the words suddenly feel heavy. They're right there in his mind, but he can't get them out. To Uera, those words hold great meaning, and he feels they shouldn't be said lightly. He apologizes to Honjuji, admitting he can't think of the right thing to say at the moment but promises to come up with something later. Honjuji smiles and reassures him that it's okay, he can take all the time he needs. She promises to wait as long as it takes. The next day, O'Hara looks at the ring but still can't bring himself to wear it. Meanwhile, Honjoji enjoys her day off by heading to the beach and taking pictures. She feels stifled by parties, crowds, and Ferris wheels. What truly brings her joy are coastlines and collecting maps, stones, and sand. To her, marriage seems so dazzling that the thought of it feels utterly exhausting, even if it is fake. Honjoji then receives a text from her friend asking how she's doing. She pauses for a moment before replying. She thinks to herself that, since it's her day off, she just wants to be left alone. Back to O'Hara, he finally manages to put on the ring and determined to become a good husband for Honjoji. Just then, he receives a call from an unknown number. The caller claims to know that his supposed marriage to Honjoji is a complete lie and threatens to send both him and Honjoji to Alaska. The next day, O'Hara tells Honjoji about the call. He has no idea who the caller might be, and since the voice sounded synthesized, he couldn't even determine their gender. Given the mention of Alaska, Honjoji suspects the caller could be one of their colleagues. While they're talking, Gonda suddenly approaches them and asks if he can visit their house that evening to discuss something. O'Hara finds Gonda's behavior suspicious, as he's never done anything like this before. Still, he has no choice but to agree. Later, O'Hara begs with his cat to behave since some of his co-workers will be visiting. He promises to give it its favorite food and even stop sniffing it. The cat seems to understand and retreats to spend time alone in another room. When Honjoji comes, she begins decorating the apartment to make it look like they truly live together. Just in case, she and O'Hara review the story of how they first met, their favorite foods, and other personal details. Later, when their co-workers arrive, they are shocked to see 3 of them instead of just 1. O'Hara thinks to himself that it's going to be a long night, but Honjoji reassures him, telling him to just do as they practiced. O'Hara then asks Gonda what he wants to discuss. Gonda becomes serious, bows to O'Hara, and begs him to teach him how to get a girlfriend, saying he also wants to get married. This surprises O'Hara, as he wasn't expecting that at all. Honjoji then brings out the food with a smile, which is unusual for her co-workers. They assume she must be filled with happiness. O'Hara doesn't get it why his co-worker is so happy for his marriage. To him, he hasn't changed. While it's true that he's married, he doesn't think it's all that great. He feels all he did was put on a ring, and that's it. His co-workers look at him and assume he's just being sarcastic. Later, when O'Hara and Gonda are alone, Gonda confesses that he's actually interested in Komiya and asks for O'Hara's support. After the co-workers leave, Honjoji and O'Hara sigh, agreeing that they should never host again. She admits she feels the same way he does. She doesn't understand why everyone is making such a big deal about her marriage. After all, it's not like it's their marriage. O'Hara reflects that maybe, to others, they seem to be glowing. Honjoji, however, believes that only those who can see that light are the ones who end up getting married. She doubts she will, thinking that's just the kind of life she's destined for. But Uera disagrees. He tells her he has a feeling she can see the light even without getting married. He explains how, when he comes home from work and watches TV with his cat, he feels like he's glowing in those peaceful moments. He then asks Honjoji if she has anything similar. Excited, she shares that looking at maps when she gets home makes her really happy. Realizing she's standing too close, she blushes, takes a step back, and quickly says it's time for her to leave. Although Uera and Honjoji are beginning to develop feelings for each other, they both keep reminding themselves not to get the wrong idea. The next day, while Honjoji is at work, a customer comes in. Since no one at the counter is available, Honjoji decides to assist him, even though it's not part of her job. To her surprise, the customer turns out to be Uera's father. He explains that he came because he heard his son is getting married and asks Honjoji if she knows anything about it. Honjoji wonders where he got that information and tells him she doesn't know anything about it. Before leaving, the old man gives Honjoji one of his company's products and asks her not to tell his son that he was here. Honjoji quickly goes to look for Uera, but he isn't in the office since it's his day off. She decides to leave the product on his desk and rushes after Uera's dad to explain that they aren't really getting married. Fortunately, Uera's dad hasn't left yet. He's still lingering, muttering to himself about how his son is bringing shame to the family. Honjoji interrupts him and explains that Uera is currently out. She offers to call him and suggests they wait at a nearby coffee shop. Honjoji asks Uera's dad what he meant when he said Uera was bringing shame to the family. Uera's dad becomes serious and explains that marriage is a significant event requiring extensive preparation, including traditional items like ceremonial dolls. He goes on to detail the many things needed for a wedding. Since they live in the countryside of Osu, there are specific local customs to follow. For example, weddings involve inviting neighbors and co-workers, meaning there will be a large number of guests. They also need to book a hot spring resort, as the celebrations last all day and continue late into the night. The festivities include dancing and, finally, a tradition where the bride is tossed into the air. Honjoji is shocked to hear this. Since Uera is his eldest son, his dad wants his wedding to be properly done, or their family will lose face. Meanwhile, Uera reads Honjoji's text and is surprised to learn that his dad is with her. Uera immediately rushes to meet his father. Upon arriving, Honjoji takes him outside and explains that his father heard about their marriage from somewhere and came straight here. However, it seems he doesn't know who Uera married to. Uera thinks, in this case, he will tell his father it's an unfounded rumor and send him home. But Honjoji doesn't want to do that. She wants to tell his father the truth. But before she can tell him, his father apologizes to Honjoji for sharing stories about his countryside wedding traditions with her. Honjoji assures him it's okay because she finds the information fascinating. However, his father admits that what he said isn't entirely true. It's how things used to be. Weddings have become much simpler now. Fewer people are getting married, the population continues to decline, and life in his countryside is inconvenient and plain. As a result, young people often leave for the big city. Honjoji interrupts him, saying that his countryside is not plain at all. She believes it's a special place and begins listing all the amazing things about it. This surprises both Uera and his father. His father then tells Honjoji that because the countryside is so special to him, he wants to protect its traditions. He goes on to explain to Uera that, before coming to Tokyo, he heard from the Kumamoto JTC that Uera was getting married, which is why he came here. Honjoji and Uera are shocked, unable to believe the news spread that far. When his father tries to recall the name of Uera's fiancée, Uera quickly interrupts, telling him that he will visit Osu this weekend to have a long talk about the matter. This satisfies his father, who agrees and leaves. Uera plans to go to Osu alone and tell his family that his marriage is a lie. Honjoji feels the problem has grown bigger and wants to help, but she thinks she shouldn't get involved when it comes to his hometown and family. The next day at work, Kurikawa gives Uera a big task. It is to act as an attendant for Princess Claudia of Lichtenburg, who is visiting Japan and wants to tour Tokyo. Uera asks Kurikawa why she chose him. Kurikawa explains that it's because the princess can't keep her hands off men. She always takes male attendants with her wherever she goes. Uera is confused, as the princess is married. Kurikawa thinks she must have her reasons. Kurikawa wants someone who can be a proper guide for the princess, since the other men in the company are likely to just enjoy their time with her. Kurikawa thinks Ohara is the most suitable one for the job, believing he seems harmless and, being married, unlikely to be a problem. Hanjuji and her co-workers begin to worry about Ohara, wondering if he'll be able to handle it. Later, as Ohara prepares the location for the princess to visit, Hanjuji looks at him and feels sorry for him, having to deal with a celebrity. She wants to help, but then questions herself, "What am I thinking?" and quickly decides to leave him alone. The next day, while waiting, the princess arrives dressed in casual clothes. She tries to speak Japanese with Ohara, but he assures her it's okay, he can speak English. He then asks if her security guard is coming too. The princess tells him that for now, she wants to experience life as a normal person. She then asks him to take her to somewhere fabulous, a place she can't find anywhere else. Since the princess is known on social media as a cat lover, Ohara takes her to a cat shrine. While they are there, Ohara receives a call from Kurikawa asking where he is. The princess is missing, but Ohara reassures Kurikawa, telling her not to worry as the princess is with him. After that, Ohara takes the princess to several places, and she seems to enjoy them all. As the day comes to an end, Ohara asks the princess if she wants to visit somewhere high up. The princess guesses he is taking her to that famous tower, but Ohara tells her no, the place he has in mind is far more unusual. It's a spot that people around the world dream of visiting, yet only a few get the chance. To her surprise, the place he's talking about is actually a school rooftop. Ohara knows the princess used to watch Japanese animation as a child, so he's sure she'll love it. To make the experience even better, he gives her a school uniform to wear, which makes her really happy. Meanwhile, back at the office, Gonda wonders why Ohara hasn't returned yet, as it's already closing time. One of the co-workers jokes that maybe they found a room somewhere. After all, he heard the princess has a fondness for men. Nearby, Hanjuji overhears the comment and starts to feel upset. Noticing that it's already night, the princess tells Ohara that she had a lot of fun today and asks him to take her to one more place, and it is his apartment. Later, Hanjuji goes to Ohara's apartment to check on him. She brings a gift along as an excuse to visit. Just as she's about to enter, she hears a woman's voice inside. Curious, she peeks through the window and sees that the woman is none other than the princess. Hanjuji felt a bit upset, but she kept telling herself it didn't matter. After all, their marriage was just a lie. Ohara could do whatever he wanted. She tried to justify his actions, thinking this might be what the princess wanted and that he couldn't refuse. Initially, Hanjuji planned to leave quietly, but she changed her mind and decided to confront Ohara, asking him what had happened. Meanwhile, the princess decided to check Ohara's room but was attacked by his cat, causing her to fall onto Ohara. Just then, Hanjuji opened the door and saw them, misunderstood the situation, thinking they were hugging. Ohara tried to explain to her, but Hanjuji got angry and told him to stop letting other women into his apartment. When the princess saw Hanjuji, she got excited and greeted her warmly. It turned out that Ohara had texted Hanjuji to let her know that the princess was visiting his apartment and wanted to meet her, but she hadn't seen the message. Feeling embarrassed, Hanjuji apologized for jumping to conclusions. The princess then told her that Ohara was a faithful person. She explained that when she asked him to take her to see his apartment, Ohara had refused, saying he couldn't because he was engaged to someone. He told her he would only take her to his apartment if his fiancée was present, which is why the princess had asked Ohara to invite Hanjuji to join them. Hearing this makes Hanjuji blush. The princess looked around, thinking to herself that this must be how a regular married couple lives. She then told them that she actually planned to leave her loyal family, which shocked both Hanjuji and Ohara. The princess revealed that she had a lover, someone she had sworn long ago to spend her future with. Her name was Marie, and their love for each other was genuine. However, because of her position as a princess, she had to marry a man she didn't love for the sake of her country. As time passed, she began to question the meaning of marriage. She realized that even if she weren't married, it wouldn't change anything for the country or its people. So, she wanted to spend her years with the one she loved. She wanted a simple and genuine marriage, like the one between Ohara and Hanjuji. She thought they looked like a lovely couple right out of a story. The princess then complained that she spent all her time around men to prevent Marie, her lover, from getting jealous. But because of this, people believed she was constantly fooling around with men and partying. Men hit on her everywhere she went, and it was such a pain. Before leaving, the princess promised that someday, she would like to find happiness like the two of them, not as a princess, but as a person. Honjuji asked O'Hara if it was okay not to tell her the truth, that they were actually not engaged, but O'Hara reassured her it was fine, thinking she would probably reach the same conclusion no matter what they said. He then asked if there was any particular reason she came over today since she hadn't seen his text. Honjuji blushed, pulled out her gift, and handed it to him. It was a frog-shaped stone. She explained that her hobby was collecting stones, and she chose this one because she had heard his father talking about frogs. Honjuji felt embarrassed, thinking how silly it was to come all this way just to give him such a trivial gift. She swore to herself she wouldn't do it again. After she left, O'Hara looked at the stone and thought her actions were really cute. He promised to himself that he would take good care of it. O'Hara was getting annoyed by his sister, who kept messaging him, asking about his fiancée. He thought it would be a hassle to explain everything to his family. Just then, he started wondering why Honjuji had come all the way to meet him. He misunderstood the situation, thinking she might be there to warn him for not properly sticking to their fake marriage plan. At work, Honjuji felt embarrassed every time she saw O'Hara, remembering what she had said to him. She wanted to ask if he was going to his hometown that weekend but couldn't bring herself to do so. Just then, Gonda asked O'Hara if he was heading to his parents' place with Honjuji that weekend, surprising everyone. They all assumed it was finally time for O'Hara to introduce Honjuji to his family. Honjuji was confused about how Gonda knew anything about it, but O'Hara quickly downplayed the situation. He told Gonda it wasn't anything serious and that he was just going back to handle some boring stuff. Then, he whispered to Honjuji, reassuring her that he was going alone. Just then, Honjuji received a call from an unknown number, similar to O'Hara's, threatening her and insisting that she had to go with him. The next day, after dropping his cat off at the cat hotel, O'Hara realized they now had to travel together. He sighed at the thought of covering Honjuji's hotel and plane ticket expenses, knowing it would cost him a lot of money. Meanwhile, Honjuji felt relieved that they were going together, as she wanted to apologize to O'Hara's family. While deciding what to wear, she recalled her mother's words encouraging her to be confident and wear whatever made her happy. As O'Hara waited, he was stunned by how beautiful Honjuji looked. For a moment, it really felt like she was on her way to meet her future in-laws. On the other hand, Honjuji was nervously wondering if her outfit looked okay. Trying to break the silence between them, she began talking about her childhood. Unlike most kids, Honjuji grew up living only with her mother. Since her mother frequently went on business trips, Honjuji was often left home alone. Because of this, she developed a hobby of looking at maps, imagining trips she and her mother could take together. Her mother always apologized for leaving her alone so much, but Honjuji never blamed her. After arriving, O'Hara and Honjuji accidentally run into O'Hara's grandmother, who insists on taking them to her home. On the way, Honjuji confesses to his grandmother that the story about their engagement is a lie and that they're not actually getting married. While surprised, his grandmother doesn't seem angry at all. Meanwhile, O'Hara's father decides to visit the grandmother's house to help her with a shipment. The family is unsure when O'Hara will arrive since he hasn't been answering his phone. At the grandmother's place, O'Hara and Honjuji are surprised to see a large number of fruits ready for shipment. O'Hara volunteers to help when he notices his grandfather lying down nearby, complaining about his back pain. Honjuji asks the grandmother if there's anything she can do to help, and the grandmother takes her to the field to harvest melons. As they work together, Honjuji and the grandmother begin to bond. The grandmother then tells Honjuji that she doesn't need to lie, she can tell they are actually getting married. Honjuji tries to deny it, but the grandmother ignores her protests. She explains that she knows they're a couple because O'Hara seems to care deeply for Honjuji and looks genuinely happy around her. The grandmother then asks Honjuji to take good care of him. Despite her attempts to deny the claim, Honjuji suddenly faints from heatstroke. Panicked, the grandmother quickly calls for help. O'Hara rushes to carry Honjuji inside, but his back gives out because she's too heavy for him. As they approach the door to go inside, it suddenly opens, and to their surprise, it's O'Hara's father. While O'Hara and his dad carry Honjuji, O'Hara reveals the truth about their fake marriage. His dad becomes angry and scolds him for lying. Later, they call a doctor to check on Honjuji, and it is revealed that she is just exhausted. His dad then tells O'Hara to stop living a half-hearted life and start taking things seriously. That night, O'Hara returns home and explains everything to his family about the fake marriage. Surprisingly, they take it well and even express concern for Honjuji, asking if she's okay. When O'Hara goes back to his grandmother's house, he is shocked to find that she has already prepared a futon for him to sleep in the same room as Honjuji. As O'Hara tries to move his futon elsewhere, Honjuji suddenly wakes up. Realizing the time, she immediately apologizes to O'Hara for making him face his family alone. She promises to apologize to them properly the next day. O'Hara assures her it's unnecessary, but she refuses to listen. Just then, they hear frogs croaking outside. Honjuji asks O'Hara to accompany her outside. She is mesmerized by the beauty of the countryside at night. While looking around, she gets startled by a frog and falls into O'Hara's arms. Embarrassed, she quickly pulls away. Honjuji tells O'Hara that meeting him has brought her to some unexpected places. She's been on many trips, but none as enjoyable as this one. O'Hara then tells her that the frog-shaped stone she gave him made him really happy. Every time he looks at it, he is reminded of her. The two share a moment, gazing at each other like a married couple. Just as O'Hara tries to confess his feelings, they are interrupted by a frog. The next day, Honjuji couldn't stop thinking about O'Hara, wondering what he was going to say. She couldn't even look at him properly. Later, while walking to his parents' house, Honjuji notices how fluffy O'Hara's hair looks and feels tempted to touch it, but she keeps reminding herself not to. After apologizing to his family, they quickly forgive her and seem to genuinely like Honjuji. O'Hara's mother then suggests that he show Honjuji around the town. Hearing this, Honjuji gets excited and says she wants to visit the volcano museum. Honjuji tells O'Hara that she's been wanting to visit the museum for a while because of her favorite TV show, Bochi Komori, a program where they explore different towns. O'Hara smiles and tells her that he's also a fan of the show. Once again, Honjuji can't help but glance at O'Hara's hair. At the volcano museum, Honjuji and O'Hara have a wonderful time together. But then, they notice a teacher struggling to manage a group of students. Feeling sorry for the teacher, both Honjuji and O'Hara decide to step in and help entertain the kids. On the way back, Honjuji finds herself falling for O'Hara even more. When they arrive at his parents' house, O'Hara is surprised to see his childhood friend, Nao, who is now working as a glassmaker. He quickly introduces Nao to Honjuji. However, when Honjuji notices Nao casually playing with O'Hara's hair, she starts to feel a bit jealous and begins to give up on the idea of being more than just a friend to O'Hara. Nao then tells Honjuji that she would like to become her friend too and mentions that she'll be moving to Tokyo soon to work there.
The next day, after returning from his hometown, O'Hara couldn't stop thinking about Honjuji. He wondered why she had suddenly become so cold to him on their way back. After everything they had been through together, he thought they were finally starting to get along. In the end, he felt relieved that he hadn't fully confessed his feelings to her, since she might not even like him at all. Meanwhile, Honjuji couldn't stop thinking about O'Hara either. She felt foolish for believing that she and O'Hara had some kind of dramatic story together. Determined to move on, she told herself to push her feelings aside and stop dwelling on it. At work, Kurokawa tries to motivate everyone to work hard since the summer fair is about to begin. Her encouragement boosts everyone's energy, especially Shinshi. During lunch, Shinshi takes out the bento his wife made for him, making everyone so jealous, with some even remarking on how wonderful his life is. At the same time, O'Hara attempts to talk to Honjuji, but she still seems uninterested in talking to him. Later, O'Hara's coworker complains about how he also wants a wife like Shinshi's. He then asks O'Hara how to get Komiya to like him, saying she never seems to notice him. After all, women look at a man's face when they're interested. Hearing this, O'Hara feels a pang of sadness as he realizes that Honjuji also hasn't looked his way today. He wonders if she did something wrong to upset her. The next day at work, everyone became busy because for some reason, Shinshi didn't come in. They had no idea where he was and couldn't reach out to him at all. Just then, Shinshi's son suddenly arrives and asks everyone if his father is there. It turns out that last night, Shinshi and his wife had a fight, and now she wants a divorce. Hearing this shocks everyone and they begin to worry. That's when George steps in. telling everyone to calm down and not make the kid even more anxious. He reassures them that Shinshi will be fine, then asks Ohara to go with the boy to look for him while he covers Ohara's workload. Ohara and the boy then begin searching all the places where the boy thinks his father might be, but they can't find him anywhere. Ohara doesn't understand why this is happening. Shinshi seemed so happy just yesterday. After searching for a while, the boy starts to worry that they won't be able to find his father. To calm him down, Ohara takes him for a short break at a hamburger place. That's when the boy breaks down in tears, saying that everything was fine yesterday. His family was getting along so well that morning, and he wishes he could go back to that time. Seeing this, Ohara begins comforting the boy. Later, after failing to find Shinshi, George tells Ohara that he might be at a bar in Fukagawa, a place where people with nowhere else to go tend to gather. As they arrive, Ohara's coworkers show up to help, wondering if Shinshi is really inside. Not wanting the boy to see his father in a bad state, Ohara leaves him with Komiya while he and two other men enter the bar to look for Shinshi. To their surprise, Shinshi is indeed there, looking miserable as he desperately tries to erase the writing on the divorce papers. He stares at them, thinking if he's really about to lose everything over something like this. Then, as if he can't take it anymore, he suddenly gets up and runs off. Worried, everyone immediately begins searching for him. However, when they find Shinshi, he is in a state where nothing matters to him anymore and begins behaving like a gorilla. His son sees this and tries to stop him, but Honjuji intervenes, telling the boy to calm down. She looks at the kid, and it reminds her of the time when her own parents had a fight. Just as Shinshi attempts to run off again, George steps in front of him and punches him in the face, knocking some sense back into him. Shinshi then breaks down crying, expressing that he's reached his limit, and if he'd known marriage would bring him this pain, he would never have gotten married in the first place. Once Shinshi calms down, he returns to his son and apologizes for losing control. It's revealed that the previous night, Shinshi went out to buy a gift for his wife in anticipation of their upcoming wedding anniversary. However, instead of happiness, his wife shocked him by asking for a divorce. Shinshi struggles to understand the sudden request, as their relationship had always seemed peaceful and devoid of any major conflict. The following day, Shinshi takes time off for a family meeting. Everyone remains worried about him, hoping he's holding up and puzzled about why his wife would choose their anniversary to raise such a sensitive issue. Hearing this, George offers advice, suggesting that perhaps Shinshi's wife had been silently enduring difficulties he was unaware of. He explains that sometimes in a marriage, one partner's complete happiness might mean enduring hardship for the other. George's insights prompt everyone to wonder about his own past experiences. Meanwhile, Ohara is still unsure about what marriage truly means. As he goes to the storage room, he notices Honjuji struggling to carry a large box and quickly rushes to help her. Honjuji, who has been distant toward Ohara recently, suddenly starts talking to him, expressing her hope that Shinshi won't have to go through with the divorce. Hearing this surprises Ohara, leaving him speechless and unsure how to respond. Later, on her way home, Honjuji thinks about Ohara, feeling uncertain about how to approach or talk to him now. Her thoughts drift to her own parents' divorce, remembering how afterward it became just her and her mother. Deep in thought, Honjuji is startled when she unexpectedly runs into Nao. If you come this far, please consider liking and subscribing for more videos like this. Thank